in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, BB Nagar, Telangana. I heartily welcome you, sir. We also have with us Director of Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, Dr. I.B. Baswa Reddy, sir. I heartily welcome you, sir. We also have with us Communication and Documentation Officer of Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, Mohammad Tayyab Alam, sir, with us. I heartily welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana.
Now let us start the program with prayer. ॐ सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. Now, I would like to request Communication and Documentation Officer of MDNIY to deliver welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana. Friday webinar of Morarji Desai Institute of Yoga is one of the important events of the institute, which is hugely appreciated by the yoga enthusiasts and the general public, both India and abroad. Eminent experts of yoga, modern medicine, allied science, media, diet and nutrition have been participating in this webinar to discuss upon important health issues and conditions. Today we have with us respected Dr. Sai Krishna Tikkasa, Associate Professor, Psychiatry, AIIMS, Bibinagar, Telangana. Dr. Sai is a completely devoted in research and teaching, has received many awards and also published papers in peer-reviewed journals, both nationally and internationally. Today's topic, exercise and mental health, which is quite unique one, and also the demand of the time. On behalf of Morarji Desai Institute of Yoga and my own behalf, it's my privilege to welcome you, sir, in our Friday webinar. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much.
I also extend my warm welcome to Dr. Iswar V. Basavareddy, sir, Director, Morarji Desai Institute of Yoga. It is because of Director sir's guidance and motivation, we are smoothly organizing many online programs. It is one of the important program that is Friday webinar. Welcome you, sir, in today's edition.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also welcome all the staff, the students, and the social media team of the Institute and the social media friends who are joining and promoting the event. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to request our Director, sir, Dr. I.B. Baswa Reddy, sir, to deliver introductory remarks. Sir.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Today's guest speaker, Professor Sai Krishna Tikkaji. My colleagues in the institute, Shri Tayabalamji, Dr. Vandana, Charu, and all my faculty members, student friends, and yoga enthusiasts participating and attending this weekly webinar through various social media platforms across the globe. My pranams to you all. At the outset, it's my privilege and also I feel proud to introduce and welcome today's guest speaker, Dr. Sai Krishna Tikkaji. He is currently working as an associate professor and head of the Department of Psychiatry in a prestigious All India Institute of Medical Science, Bibinagar, Telangana. And recently the same has been started. He has been associated with research and teaching science for the last more than 10 years. His areas of interest are cognitive neuroscience, electrophysiology, and non-invasive brain stimulation. He's an associate editor of Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine and member of editorial board and invited peer reviewer of more than 14 international journals. Dr. Tikka is associated with several extramural and intramural research projects. He has more than 82 research articles and 21 book chapters to his credits in his area of specialization. He has received several awards and recognitions like Young Psychiatrist Award, Bhagwat Award, Marafati Award, and by Indian Psychiatric Society. And today we are very fortunate to have him. Apart from his many important engagements, Dr. Sai Krishna is very kind enough to accept our invitation and to deliver this very important Friday webinar. I heartily welcome you, Professor Sai Krishna ji.
Thank you so much.
And just to inform you and our institute, and I am particularly associated with many of the leading psychiatrists and also leading institutions like NIMANS, IBAS, and experts like Dr. Nagaraj, Dr. Gangadhar, Dr. Previous director, and many of the friends, now the eminent psychologists like Professor Deshpande, Bhagwatwar from Mumbai University. So here Mr. Desai, Professor Desai, like this very eminent professionals in the field of psychology and psychiatry, both. So they are associated with our institutions, activities, teaching, research, publications. I do hope that with this interesting topic, Dr. Sai Krishna will also continue to associate with our activities. It's my wish. And regarding today's topic, the whole world is talking about the mental health, stress, anxiety, because of the pandemic condition. That's one thing. If I see the research papers published in yoga during last 15 years, there are more than 11,000, 12,000 papers in peer review index journals. So more than half of them are related to stress or meditation. 66-67% of the research papers published in yoga are related to stress, depression, or psychiatric conditions, and also on meditation, which is also related to mostly on mind and its management. So therefore, today, Professor Tikka will emphasize on exercise and mental health, how they are interrelated. And physical exercise has been considered to have a significant impact on global mental health, cognitive functions, and well-being. And most importantly, they contribute for the quality of life. So on 26th onwards, we have a 3 days WHO meeting, very policy making meeting of the Southeast Asian countries, where we are going to discuss about the role of physical activity in the mental well-being. So that's why the exercise plays an important role. So in this talk, the science behind the role of exercise on mental health is going to be discussed, and an appraisal of the latest available evidence on the mental health benefits of physical exercises and specific recommendations will be provided by the Professor Sai Krishna. So at the same time, under the pandemic condition, we have the challenges, and also relevant to the Indian context. methods to enhance the acceptability of physical exercise in our population is also going to be subsequently discussed. Before I conclude, unlike Western countries or in some Asian countries like Japan, China, and South Korea, and some countries I traveled and saw. So physical activity is Indian continent. It is very, very rare separately what we think in the Western countries and everything. So in the because our countries basically farmers are playing role 70% is now the last 1 decade or 2 decades the scenario has been changed. ये किसान का देश है 70% of populations are engaged in the farming and related. Now in this changing scenario, especially more than 40% and above population are living in the not in villages but in the small cities and urbanization what we call. So where physical activity is very much essential. WHO we are recommending minimum 150 minutes of physical activity minimum per week. See to every day we do the labor for 8 hours, but we are recommending at least 150 minutes. That's 2.5 hours of physical activity in 1 week. Bare minimum we are recommending. That much inactive we become, and because of the technology and the computerization and all these things. Therefore, that is having a larger impact on our mental health, and especially anxiety, depressions are the number of patients are increasing because of this is so much of globalization and modern technology. So I'm so happy that Dr. Sai Krishna has did some studies and emphasizing on this. So it's a very interesting talk for me also to learn something so that I can carry this one on the next WHO workshop to be held on. Let's say consultative meetings held on 26th to 28th of this month. So once again, thank you, Dr. Sai Krishna, for accepting us. Welcome to you, and I welcome all my faculty members again, students. I request Sai Krishna to deliver the talk on the topic exercise and mental health. Dr. Sai Krishna Tikka.
Thank you so much, sir. Special thanks to you for that generous introduction. And it's indeed a great privilege to me. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah.
It's indeed a great privilege to be part of this a fantastic program. First of all, I would like to congratulate you and your team for this fantastic program, the Friday webinars. And thank you again. And not just this program, I will be more than happy to be part of, to be associated with your institute in conducting a lot of academic and research activities. That will be a special privilege to me as well. At the outset, I would like to also thank Dr. Vandana, who took me through the process of starting this, the talk. And she was again generous enough to have given me, the details of previous talks that have happened. And I saw it is really a fantastic effort that the institute is doing. And also Dr. Priyanka Rai, who is in this institute, and she is a friend of mine from my post-graduation days at Central Institute of Psychiatry. And thank you all. From that list which Dr. Vandana had shown me, there were most of the talks that were delivered, almost all of them were strictly related to yoga. I wanted to not too much emphasizing on yoga, but then on the other aspects of physical activities. Yoga is definitely a part of it, but then I would like to emphasize on the other parts of physical activities, which in general is called as exercise. Like exercise and mental health are very intimately related. and I am a sports enthusiast myself, and I am intimate towards sports, exercise, and mental health. This is my medical college team, where out of these 11 players, 4 of them are psychiatrists, and all 4 of them are very much interested in sports, psychiatry, exercise, psychiatry, yoga, psychiatry, etc. And we were all very thrilled when I shared this item, this article to them, and as well as the general psychiatry, doctors that we have, and general mental health as well. That is this new field that is evolving, which is called as sports psychiatry, or in general sports mental health. I think of late, people, great athletes like even Virat Kohli, they have emphasized the role of, understanding mental health in athletes and all that. So sports psychiatry and psychotherapy generally is, there are two sides of this coin. One is mental health and mental disorders in athletes. The other part is physical activity, exercise, and sports, and the prevention and treatment of mental disorders. Not just mental disorders, but I think it percolates to general mental health of general population as well. So let us first know what exactly is the definition of exercise. Exercise by the American College of Sports Medicine definition is planned, structured, and repetitive bodily movement done to improve. It's very important that it's done to improve or maintain one or more components of physical fitness. Now, exercise is done to improve or maintain someone's physical fitness. But for mental fitness, now we are talking about physical activity, exercise, and mental health. So does this definition fit to mental fitness as well? Now, we mental health professionals who are more into talking therapy, more into prescribing, pharmacological agents. Now, how do we see ourselves in, transforming ourselves, where we are actually telling our clients to, do physical exercise for mental fitness or for improving mental health? So in this transformation, there are several questions that will arise among us, among many various, people. Fitness, how will mental health, mental fitness fit here? So first question that comes is, what is the science behind it? Are we talking of something scientifically valid or not? Is it only for prevention of, certain mental health disorders and treatment of mental disorders? Is it indeed effective? What is the evidence? What are the indications? In what, and whom should I actually tell people, who are these people whom I will be prescribing physical fitness or exercise? And if yes, what are the challenges that are going when I am, indicating this? So in this particular talk, I will deliberate upon each of these issues one by one, so that we have an overall or holistic view about what exercise what is the impact that it has on mental health. As most of us know, although as Dr. Basureddy has told us, Indians are not very keen in fitness, but then if you see outside in most of these urban areas, especially New Delhi or areas like Hyderabad here, we see a lot of sports enthusiasts, very many fitness enthusiasts. They're there outside early in the morning running. And once we are done with running, at the end of the run, there is a high that comes up, not just running, it can be any activity, any physical activity. You play a small badminton game, or say, ball and over of cricket. There's this kind of high that comes up along with the tiredness that is there. That is classically called as runner's high. And that is how science behind sports and exercise and its impact on mental health began. Like, what is this runner's high? Why does it give this high to us? In what are the mechanisms in the brain that are there? So it all began like this. And researchers over time, so this is 1980s paper, so there is more than 40 years that have evolved since then. And the research overall tells us there are systems in the brain that are important, that determine runner's high. The neurotrophins that are there, the endocannabinoid system that is there, the neurotransmitter system, especially GABAergic system, serotonin and dopamine system. So these are the four, brain mechanisms that are, very important basically in the impact of exercise on mental health. So how does this research on runner's high translate in general to the overall, effects on mental health? So from the activation of these mechanisms, these four mechanisms, endorphins, endocannabinoids, neurotrophins, etc., a cascade of complex cellular events that occur in the body and in the brain and lead to certain important things. One is neurogenesis. Neurogenesis, for you all to simplify, it is generation of new neurons in the brain, or the neurons which were not supposed to take, have that action will take up that particular role and start working. Angiogenesis is generation of new blood vessels, wherein these new blood vessels feeding to the generation of new neurons. Then that leads to neuroplasticity and subsequently positive effects on mental health. Now in the COVID era, we are all most of us have become more aware of what are interleukins, what are IL-6, IL-1, TNF-alpha, inflammation, etc. So what exercise does is it reduces the levels of IL-6, TNF-alpha, and that leads to anti-inflammatory action and hence positive effects on mental health. So this is in just how exercise affects mental health. So now when I say it indeed affects, now that there is a scientific basis to it. Now, how do I know whether it is for prevention or for treatment? So the general guidelines, there's a lot of research on exercise and various mental disorders. There are two mental disorders that have come up, that have shown themselves up very clearly and separately, distinctly. That is, one is dementia, the other one is depression. So how does exercise prevent dementia? What are the assumptions? So this is the WHO document which says physical activity definitely can prevent dementia. Dementia is a cognitive condition which occurs later in the age, in old age especially, where there will be memory problems and other cognitive problems. The recommendation of WHO is very clear, and that is based on two assumptions. The two assumptions here are that around 1/3 of the cases of dementia cases are attributable to modifiable risk factors. Modifiable risk factors mean, say, the way you eat, the lifestyle, etc., etc. So by modifying lifestyle means inducing exercise, helping someone to start exercise. The other assumption is that what's good for the heart is good for the brain. It's very clear. Like if it's good for physical activity, it will be good for mental activity as well. So based on these two assumptions, WHO has given recommendations, two recommendations. One, that physical activity should be recommended to adults with normal cognition, like we all, adults with normal cognition, to reduce the risk of cognitive decline that can happen later in the age. So it's very clear. So if you want yourself to be cognitively fit at later age, you need to start physical activity. And what is the quality of evidence for this? There's moderate quality of evidence, and strength of recommendation is very strong. It's quite strong. So the second recommendation that WHO does in the case of dementia is that physical activity may be recommended to adults with mild cognitive impairment. So mild cognitive impairment is a stage wherein it's between normal cognition and full-blown dementia. So the cognitive problems have started to occur, and that may subsequently become dementia. So physical activity is recommended in these adults with mild cognitive impairment to reduce the risk of cognitive decline further. So it's very clear. So normal cognition, do physical activity so that there's no risk further. If you have already had mild cognitive impairment, these age maybe around 60 years, 50 to 60 years, wherein these mild cognitive changes have already started to occur, then please start physical activity so that there's no further cognitive decline. Although the evidence is low, but the strength of recommendation is also conditional. So these are the two broad recommendations that WHO does for dementia prevention for exercise. Now coming to depression, like I've said, dementia and depression are these two studies which say that physical activity can actually prevent these two disorders. So there's this big meta-analysis that happened, which included about 2 lakh individuals So the conclusion of this particular analysis was that the available evidence supports the notion that physical activity can confer protection against the emergence of depression, regardless of age and geographical region. So whatever age it is, be it in adolescence, be it in young adulthood, later age, regardless of age and regardless of geographical, you may be in USA, you may be in Europe, you may be in tropical countries like India, down south in Australia. Irrespective of age and geographical region, physical activity can confer protection against emergence of depression. So this is quite a statement for us. And this is another big study. They said no, this is not enough. So people in USA, actually this paper is published in Lancet Psychiatry, which says they have actually looked up at 1.2 million individuals in USA between this particular time period of 2011 and 15. What they found is that people who exercise more, so the blue one here, the people who exercise compared to those who do not exercise have lesser mental health burden in the last few months. This is the one outcome measure that they had. So if you exercise, the chances of mental health burden are indeed half of what if you were not to exercise. This is for the whole sample. And if for someone who has had a diagnosis of depression earlier or who have had depression in the past, for them also, now when compared to people who do not exercise, people who exercised have got lesser mental health burden. So two strong statements here. For dementia, if you want to prevent dementia or further decline, start exercise. If you don't want to have a diagnosis of depression, or you don't want to fall into depression because of any N reasons, it can be COVID, it can be whatnot, then please start exercise. So the chances of having mental health burden due to depression or dementia are lesser if you start exercising. And now for the treatment of disorders, now they say, okay, prevention is fine. It might prevent because of so many other reasons. Now, if I have a patient with, say, depression or anxiety or psychosis, if I tell him to start exercise, will that help him or not? Indeed, yes. The evidence is very strong. There are several meta-analyses that say that exercise reduces depression, not just in adults, but in children, adults, older adults. There are 8 meta-analyses on that. It reduces stress and anxiety symptoms, and there are 3 meta-analyses. As an adjunct, this was surprising to me as well. To me, schizophrenia is a very biological disorder, and the role of other and alternate therapies are little less than for other disorders, definitely. So as adjunct, exercise was very much effective in reducing not just positive and negative symptoms, but also global cognitive decline in schizophrenia. So schizophrenia, later on, what happens is they have cognitive decline that becomes main problem. So in these patients, if we say please start exercising, so that will not just improve their symptoms, but then it also improves global cognitive decline in them. And interestingly, in children with ADHD we feel that they're already so active, exercise may be there, but then in them, guided exercise or graded exercise, come to what guided and graded exercises are. So that have been seen to improve their cognitive function. So these children started functioning better in their school when they started doing physical activities. So in just this is says that in a multitude of disorders, physical activity as an adjunct, that means we start the treatment as usual and add exercise, and that addition of exercise is going to give us much better results. Now, in general, when we talk of not disorders, when I see at mental health in general, those who have not crossed the the threshold of being called as a disorder, two important things come to me. They're like, already anxiety was covered, anxiety and depression was covered earlier in the slide. So sleep and stress. So sleep and stress, there's a very clear relationship of them with exercise. So this is again a recent, although not very recent, 4 years, there's no other systematic review after this. So what this article said that, although in early cases like, children, adolescents, and adults, findings may be mixed, that exercise may not have significant effect on sleep and stress. But in, say, in elderly, especially those of later age 40s and after that. In these cases, exercise promoted increased sleep efficiency and duration regardless of mode and intensity. So whatever activity it was, be it be fast running, or be it be cycling, be it be only gardening, or be it be yoga, regardless of what activity it was, it promoted sleep efficiency and duration in these middle-aged and elderly people. So they say sleep and exercise have substantial positive effects on one another. And most of people who come to our clinics with respect to general health, not really having a mental health disorder, they come with obesity. Obesity is a big stress that leads to a lot of stress and insomnia, etc., etc. And very intriguingly, exercise has been shown to reverse metabolic syndrome. I'm not saying if you exercise, people say that keep exercising, you'll not develop obesity, you'll not develop diabetes later on. But it's important here, if someone has already developed metabolic syndrome, already someone has obesity, in them start exercise and the metabolic syndrome gets reversed. And there's moderate evidence for this. Definitely, there are challenges in people with obesity when we ask them to start exercise. It's not very easy for them. They'll say, everyone tells me this, you're also telling me this. No, I mean, this is not going to work. It's not possible for me to start exercise. So there are certain things will come up. We'll come and discuss these challenges later on. So yes, exercise reverses metabolic syndrome, and there is moderate evidence for this. Now, we know that it is scientifically valid. It is worth for prevention as well as exercise, and we know that it is effective. There is enough evidence in terms of highest evidence in terms of meta-analysis. There are certain indications, like I've told: prevention, depression, dementia; treatment, depression, anxiety, psychosis as well, ADHD, sleep, etc., etc. So there's a spectrum of indications for that. Now, when we say writing, when we tell someone, prescribe someone that yes, start exercise. What exercise they'll ask you? Which exercise? For how much duration? For how long should you do that? So these are the things that come up. So like Dr. Basureddy has already told, BWH has given very clear recommendations. So they have broadly divided activity into moderate activity that is useful for physical health as well as mental health, is moderate intensity physical activity and vigorous intensity physical activity. I want all of you to know what actually means moderate intensity physical activity, because it's very important even for me. When I brisk walk, is that moderate intensity or vigorous? If I run, whether that is moderate or vigorous. So moderate intensity exercise includes brisk walking, dancing, gardening, housework and domestic chores. So this is very important. See, housework and domestic chores, although WHO says that this is a moderate intensity, I'll come to it later. That what there is a disclaimer there. So traditional hunting and gathering. So this doesn't happen. So when Dr. Basureddy said Indians are mostly farmers, not much of urbanization happened. So people might feel that farming itself is physical activity. Yes, it is. So traditional hunting, gathering, the thing that happens in villages, tribal areas. So all that is part of moderate intensity physical activity. Then active involvement in games and sports with children, and walking domestic animals along. So when you play with children, that is moderate. When you play, take your very dear dog to a walk, that is moderate activity. General building tasks like roofing, thatching, painting that you can do in your house itself. So those are again considered as moderate intensity physical activities. Then carrying or moving moderate loads, less than 20 kgs, like if you're lifting a suitcase, or maybe a box, one place to somewhere. All these are considered as moderate intensity physical activities. Now coming to vigorous activities, running, yes. Running can be fast running, it can be treadmill running. Walking or climbing briskly up a hill. When you walk on a plain surface, it is moderate. But when you climb up a hill, walk up a hill, that is considered vigorous activity. Fast cycling, aerobics, fast swimming, competitive sports and games like traditional games like football, volleyball, hockey, basketball. In India, what I see in most of these regions, as volleyball is there, badminton is coming up quite up. So that is, considered as vigorous intensity activity. heavy shoveling, digging ditches, carrying and moving heavy loads more than 20 kgs. And if you're carrying them, that is considered as vigorous activity. So how much is required? So WHO has clearly divided into two groups: children 5 to 17 years, adults who are more than 18 years. So for children who are less than 18 years, 60 minutes per day of either moderate or vigorous activity is good enough. And if you want additional benefits, you can do extra 60 minutes, up to 60 minutes extra. That will give you additional benefits, not anymore. And you can do strengthening exercises 3 per week. That can be these local gyms that are there, those the society gyms that are there, those government gyms that many of the state governments have arranged in most places. Now you can do some strengthening for children as well. So that is 3 per week. So 60 minutes every day. For additional benefits, one more hour. So once they come back from school, when you go back to your home, take them to a park, ask them to play for 60 minutes. If you play along with them, that is considered moderate activity. And for adults, moderate activity is 150 minutes. Like I said, like Dr. Basreddy also has told that it is not a bare minimum. 150 hours is what, just 2.5 hours per week. But then, what is important is that much also is not done in most places. And if you're doing vigorous exercise, 75 minutes per week is enough, is what they say. And if you want additional benefits, so 300 minutes per week of moderate exercise and 150 minutes per week of vigorous exercise can be added on to get additional benefits. And muscle strengthening can be done twice per week. Specifically for prevention of dementia, there is a dictum there. They say aerobic 2 a day, resistance 2 a week. Very clear. Whenever you're recommending exercise to aged people or for even normal adults like us, where the target is not to be having cognitive decline later on in our elderly age. So aerobic 2 a day, 2 aerobic exercises for 10 minutes a day, morning, evening. It can be taking your dog for a stroll, cycling, some jogging, all these activities, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. Resistance training, go hit the gym twice a week, like Thursday, Friday, easy days. I can do strengthening on 2 days a week. That is enough. So this is a recommendation for dementia prevention. Now, but when it comes to core psychiatric conditions like depression or anxiety, it's little more complicated. So what they say is 45 minutes a day is important. This is that study which saw whether depression is prevented down the line if people exercise more. So they found 45 minutes a day is important. So it can be divided into 20 minutes in the morning, 25 minutes in the evening, like that. So, and this is very important. What's ideal duration in a month is around 20 to 23 days. That is around, this is, say you need to do it for 5 days a week. So 4 weeks, it's 20 days. So 5 days a week exercise is ideal, but 3 per week is sufficient enough. Beyond that, actually people, this study has found that if you do exercise daily or say 6 days a week, the mental health burden is much more. So we need to restrict ourselves to 5. 3 is enough, 5 is good enough. So 3 days a week to 5 days a week and 45 minutes a day exercise is for prevention of depression. Now, what kind of exercise? Again, people ask, I'm not interested in running. I am interested in cycling. I am interested in low intensity training, like taking my dog along, but I cannot do jogging, running, etc., etc. So what these studies? This is a study which saw association between all these in improving depression outcomes and mental health outcomes. What they found is walking is equivalent to low intensity, running is equivalent to jogging, running, jogging, biking is equivalent to high intensity training, low intensity training is equivalent to high intensity. There's actually not much difference. So any type of exercise, what's important is to exercise for that particular duration. Okay, but it can be any type of exercise. This is very important. There's no specific kind of activity that is very much special recommendation. Now, this is for general public. So there are some studies which say, like I said, WHO also, it says, household chores are it's enough. But then there are some studies, this is at 1.2 million thing again. So which says household physical activity is not enough. We have to do more than what is normal to us. And then popular sports reduce the mental health burden the most. The popular in India can be cricket, popular India can be, I know more indigenous sports like kabaddi can be more popular. Now those are these popular sports that improve the mental health burden the most. So any activity, yes, household may not be, but then if it comes to sports, if someone is interested in say playing badminton or say playing any sport that he likes, so we should motivate that person to go and do that. So, and further, there are studies which say that contact sports like football is much better. And where there is social coordination, it's a team effort. In that, there is a better high probably that it gives, and hence better mental health, lesser mental health burden. Now, so a routine prescription for me, if I'm prescribing physical activity to any subject, it can be any client who comes with say very mild depression. So generally what we do, we do talk therapy. I send it to my clinical psychologist client here, clinical psychologist colleague to take up this case for therapy. I send it to my yoga therapist that you please start some lifestyle training in him, etc., etc. Or, when I say that there's some biological component or some, even many clients come with saying that, we need some pills. So along with that pill, I write cycling 15 minutes, once in the morning, once in the evening, for 5 days a week, and this is take it for 3 months. So generally people might say yes, but then when they follow up, when we ask them like, have you been cycling? They all say, most of them say no. In fact, I encourage them to run. I tell them, please buy a pair of new shoes, start your exercise, come on, do that. Most of them say yes, and some of them will actually buy a new pair of shoes, but then they don't end up in doing their exercise regularly. Maybe they do it for 1 or 2 days, but not beyond that. I'll come to the challenges again later on. So we should be cautious. There can be side effects as well. Cautious what? If there is a history of coronary artery disease, if someone is at high risk, say if someone has uncontrolled hypertension or diabetes for a long time, he's at a high risk, he has high lipid profile, he has high risk for coronary artery disease or heart attacks. So I'm not going to tell him to start exercise. Someone has orthostatic hypotension, it may be because of drugs as well, and it can be innate hypotension which can be there in them. I'll not tell them to start exercise. If someone has problem in coordination, they cannot walk properly, they have great imbalance, people especially elderlies who come, they say inko balance nahi ho pa raha, they cannot walk properly, they skid very often, they fall down very often, and then on examination if I find there's the gait is not proper, then I'll not prescribe them physical activity. And if someone has arthritis, most of these middle-aged elderly women who come, I mean, more often than not, they all have arthritis and other musculoskeletal disorders. I'm not going to ask them to start exercising, but but then they have to start exercise somehow. So how is that challenge? How do I take up challenge? Again, I'll come to it later. What are the side effects? Injury, yes. They can fall down, they can tear their muscle somewhere if they do it extra. And then overtraining again, people go into gym and they get addicted, they overtrain, that they have that overtraining has its own side effects, physical as well as mental. Exercise dependence, not very rare, not very common, quite rare, but then when it happens, it's very difficult for us, because people start taking steroids, whatnot, to actually keep continuing that exercise in that particular pattern. So that is a different entity. I'm not going to cover that here. So these are the cautions and side effects that are there. So now coming to challenges, asking someone to start exercise is very easy, but then for them to implement and for us to actually follow that implementation is really difficult. I'll tell you. I think that people who are there, as yoga therapists or who actually promote yoga will also know that yes, when I go for one yoga session on the International Yoga Day, I do that, but not anymore. So biggest hurdle is motivation. There are hurdles in treating mental health. Medicines, they'll say, "Nahi, doctor sahab, nahi, dawai nahi do." Okay, they agree, they start taking. Then we say, no, you have to add on therapy. You have to go to a clinical psychologist, talk to her, come at regular intervals. they'll say nahi ho payega sir. And then after some time, yeah, they agree to this as well. Then when on that, if we say that start exercise, they're like, doctor sahab, please dawai de do, give me a pill instead, I'm not going to start this exercise. So the biggest motivation, biggest hurdle is motivation. This is the biggest challenge. Now, how do we deal with that? So scientists have come up with this new thing called exercise pill. It can be an alternative, if I'm not going to exercise, I can take this pill and have all the benefits of exercise. But this is for future. It is still in very nascent stage, not even in infancy, I would say. This pill is going to come up, but then maybe it will take 100 years. It may not come up as well. So that is for something for later. But now what I have, I have to improve exercise mindedness in them. Is there not exercise में वो they will say sir कभी मैंने बचपन से कभी मैंने exercise ही नहीं करी अभी कैसे करूँ. Then one. Second is they don't want to give that effort, that extra effort to walk. They are happy with their social media. They'll watch YouTube videos for long, but then they'll say time nahi hai hamare paas. There's no time. There's big resistance for effort. The illness factors, because most of the mental illness itself, like depression or dementia, will have problems in energy and volition. One important thing, I think my clinical psychology colleagues, who are on this, participating in this, will know, motivation enhancement that is there to motivate someone to quit alcohol, motivate someone to quit smoking. The same kind of principles will also be helpful in asking someone to start exercise. So this is the motivation to change from no exercise to yes exercise. The same principles of motivation enhancement will start, and it is a therapeutic process which will take maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks time. So there is resistance, there is a motivation resistance to start exercise, then I'll say please visit my colleague, clinical psychology colleague. They'll give you this motivation enhancement, and then slowly making them ready to start exercise. And there's something called putting it in perspective. We don't give them specially exercise. So there's something called mastery and pleasure, where we'll have to add exercise to this whole big perspective. How do I do that? Say we set certain goals, very realistic goals. Says also add some more types of exercise to it, say yoga, mindfulness, relaxation, which are less, they don't need that much of effort to start. Then add social. Someone is very happy chit chatting. This is a female who says I love to chit chat with my friends in the evenings, and they also like say Zumba classes which are there. So they are happy doing all this. So add exercise to that big perspective. Put exercise into that perspective where a person is doing a lot of activities, and include exercise in that. I'm sorry. So also ask them what exercise you do which you like, what game you like, you have played in the past. From played in the past to what you like. Say if they say no, I don't like anything, we'll ask them what do you like to watch. At least you like to watch cricket, you like to watch tennis, you like Federer, you like Virat Kohli, what. So like that we start motivating and putting in this perspective. And maybe if they have any specific hobbies, like I said, Zumba is a hobby, or say chatting with friends is a hobby, then attach physical activity to that hobby. So I will modify this prescription. So I'll make this particular regime to them. I'll prepare this weekly schedule. So morning, instead of exercise, I've replaced cycling with a Zumba here. So Zumba in the morning, Zumba in the evening. Zumba in the morning, Zumba in the evening. Wednesday, I give them a special thing. If someone, any hobby, like say that hobby is, cooking. So I add something called Zumba chicken. It is Zumba kitchen. People who are into this activity, get together, cook up certain things and feed each other. So then again on Sunday I have a Zumba brunch with this chit chat group which they can sit on a brunch, and these are like these rewards for completing that week's Zumba cycle. So I will have to have these little more innovative techniques to start someone on physical activity. Now there are more guided and graded programs. Guided means you have a trainer with you. You group here, there are 4 or 5 people who say we'll hire one trainer who comes and will train us in any activity. It can be any physical activity. It can be aerobics to say simple jogging or cycling, or you go to a gym where there's a gym instructor. That instructor can become your guide. So there are many there are even online guides now for exercise. So all those things can be guided exercises. It can be graded. This is very important for those who have this, say, arthritis, or low motivation, for them what will happen is first we need to grade them. How? First is establishing a baseline of achievable exercise. Whatever is what is achievable to you. You can walk 10 steps. Yes, start 10 steps. Okay, in the evening, in the morning. So negotiated incremental increase from 10 steps you go to 20, 30, like that. So you increase the duration of time. So if someone does it for 2 minutes, increase it to 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, slowly increase it. Then increase the intensity. Now he's walking on plain land, take him to uphill, take him to treadmill, increase the height slowly. So these are graded programs that will be very beneficial. And I know, don't ask me, fitness trackers are so very important. Many people are actually, they leave fitness, only keep the trackers, but then to start that, the fitness trackers are very, very important. And in that they track number of steps. Now many people ask me, sir, मैंने आज 10,000 step चला. My step count is to 20,000 today. Will I need extra thing also? Then what's important for me is not that the whole 10,000 or 20,000. So there is this WHO recommendation which says that 1 minute should have 100 steps. Okay, and like that I want 30 minutes. So 30 minutes, 3,000 steps. So if the 3,000 steps are covered in 30 minutes duration, so that is activity for me. Otherwise not. If I have walked, since morning, I've taken small little steps here and there, no particular pattern, that's not going to help me. If there is a pattern in that wherein you have walked for 3,000 steps in 30 minutes, then I'll count that as 1 in the morning or 1 in the evening. This is very important that we all should know, right? So fitness trackers will help us track that. So 30 minutes, 3,000 steps is what I want. 1 in the morning, once in the evening. So, for most of those who actually cannot, they say, I have arthritis, I have that problem, I have risk of cardiac. In them, yoga works wonders. You need to motivate them to start yoga. Yoga works wonders. Apart from yoga, there are other minimalistic exercises now which are coming up because of COVID times. Like say, taking few steps up, climbing, the steps of a temple maybe. Or just there are 2 steps, go walk, climb up, come down, climb up, come down, very minimalistic. You can jump at your own place, jump for a particular period. These are minimalistic exercises that can be helpful. And yoga, like I told, it works real wonders. And there are other, now when it comes to Indian culture and challenges, there are much bigger challenges. Cultural sanctions. Girls, women are not encouraged to start physical activity. So Dangal was one big example of what are the cultural sanctions that India has on sports in women. And that is slowly changing in urban centers, but then in rural centers it's still the same. Women are the most inactive population. So that has to change. Encouragement should come from the head of the family. So say if there is one Amir Khan in a family, not Amir Khan, maybe someone who actually motivates others in the family to start jogging, start some physical activity, that will be wonderful. And there are indigenous sports that are encouraged, so we should encourage those indigenous sports like Kho-Kho, Kabaddi. In schools, when we boys were told to play Kho-Kho, we would say कि तो लड़कियों का game है. For girls, motivate them to start Kho-Kho at least, from the schooling itself, so that they'll take up this sport later. There won't be any big hurdle later on in telling them that start something. So encouraging indigenous sports, encouragement from the significant big persons in the family not to have these cultural sanctions is very important in Indian culture. Mass motivation. Fit India is a fantastic campaign that Government of India has come up with, and it has motivated a lot of people. Generally, a lot of my clients who come to me. So that is a big mass motivation. So if there are 10 people going on, for a marathon, there are 10 more who come along with them. So there's mass motivation. More of such programs should be there. And why at all we need Fit India? So actually, like Dr. Basavareddy was telling, 54% Indians are physically inactive. That's a big number. And rest others are like active in say farming or etc. And there's this wonderful paper which has come up in Lancet, which has actually compared Indian physical activities with rest of the world, which says in children, the activity levels, physical activity levels are much better in India, in fact, than the global numbers. But then as the age increases, there's less of physical activity, less of recreational physical activity that happens. So that has to improve. There are countries where cycling is a passion. Belgium, Netherlands, cycling is a passion. Australia, doing household chores, painting, doing everything at their own pace, but doing it by themselves is a passion. So Indians don't have that passion where physical activity is an innate part of it. So we need to encourage that to happen. It will take time, but then that is very important. At least as mental health professionals or health professionals, we need to start inculcating that in our clients so that that percolates to the general population. On a bigger platform, there's this global action plan for physical activity. The WHO has come up with something called a Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Now there are several SDGs, out of which it says the physical activity global action plan says that if you encourage more and more people to start exercising, then at least 14 of these SDGs can be covered. One important SDG, that is Sustainable Development Goal 3, is well-being and quality of life, mental health, cognitive function. Very, very important. So so if you improve physical activity globally in India, start from your own place, clinic, your client, then slowly it percolates over, and the so that sustainable development goal of 2030 is reached. Still we have not much time, 8 years more. Very difficult to reach that goal, but then whatever possible can happen. So what are we taking home? Almost night, 7 o'clock now. There are certain things in our kitty that we are taking. One, we know that it has definite scientific basis. It is effective in preventing dementia and depression, specifically when it comes to mental health issues. Any exercise is important, right? So 30 to 35 minutes a day, 3,000 steps, like I've told, for general population. For specifically for this is for general population. For sports, encourage them to put into sports, especially contact sports, maybe 45 minutes, 3 per week. As an adjunct, it is effective. Physical activity is effective in treating depression, substance use, schizophrenia, etc., a broad range of disorders. Yoga, graded and guided modules, more encouragement from significant others, indigenous sports, mass motivation, etc., have to be. These are these innovative techniques that we need to do. The behavioral activation, that mastery and pleasure thing that I've shown. All these things are going to be, those innovations that you need to bring in, yourself and with your client. And to enhance acceptability, it has to club with, like I've told, it has to club with other pleasured activities. So these are the things that we are taking home. COVID times, I cannot, take COVID away. So now it's relatively an easy period of the lockdowns. There is no lockdown, only except for the mask that we are wearing. Not much of lockdown or restriction, but then what's important is be active and stay healthy at home. Doing any activity around the home is better than none at all. And don't go around, there are games that started, there are games that are happening. There are more and more people in the in the jogging parks nowadays, but still, if it is possible, if the activities in and around the home, much the better. This is the whole of this talk we had actually written down as a review. This is available in the Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine as a review article. And if you have any queries, please, you can write to me. And now I am available for any questions and discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. There are few questions in the comment box of Facebook. Somebody has asked that which type of exercise will be recommended for ADHD children?
Yeah. A very important question. So when we see ADHD children, they're anyways very, very active, running around here and there. We feel most of the parents say, what physical activity? They're already so active physically. So in them, like I've told, guided activities. Like say you start them with say simple swing. Take them to a small playing area where there are swings, there are say there are climbers. So we need to structure them in a structured activity. They can be very small activities like this. Let them spend time in swinging. Okay. Let them be there for say 10 minutes. So then we take them for a climbing exercise, ask them to do that for maybe 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes slowly. So these can be activities in and around the area. Say for example, if a person uh, is in an institution, say, so there are these uh, play areas in various institutes. So that itself is enough. So we need to put them in that structured manner. It can be any activity. So what's important is like for children, any activity is important. Moderate, vigorous, it doesn't matter. So, but the activity should be for 60 minutes. 60 minutes structured and a very guided manner. So it cannot be simply, running around here and there. That won't count. But then if they're able to do the 60 minutes of a guided, structured activity, so then the chances of their improvement, not really ADHD symptoms, maybe the cognitive part of ADHD symptoms will be better.
As we know that ADHD is related to hyperactivity of children.
Yes.
Can these physical exercises help them calm down also?
See, biologically, when we see ADHD, the activity level of ADHD children and the activity level of physical exercise, they're two different things when it comes to the brain basis. We're talking of endorphins here. We are talking of endocannabinoids here, right? Which are actually good hormones. They are happy hormones. But then the activity that happens in ADHD is because of dopaminergic activity, which is not so good. So that is because of adrenergic activity that's not so good. So there is separate basis for this. When we put them in a structured environment, structured activity, which is more likely to bring in good hormones, the changes in good hormones, say to be specific, which are going to help them in the cognition part. So that way it will be different.
Yes, sir. Somebody has asked, as you said, counting of steps is necessary. So it means half an hour of any physical activity should be performed.
Any physical activity, like I've said, like say, when you say physical activity, I specifically had this rider. Say, if someone says I am standing for 1 hour preparing, say, paneer butter masala, kitchen. I'm in kitchen preparing. मैंने वो चावल बनाया, मैंने राजमा बनाया, ये बनाया, मेरा 1 घंटा हो गया. I was standing for the whole period and मेरा 1 घंटा हो गया. Okay, so that is not considered. Although WHO says that it can be household, but then the activity which I am talking of, the 30 minutes activity which I am talking of, should be something more than usual exercise that you do on regular basis. Okay, so and if you are able to count steps, if those 3,000 steps have been counted in 30 minutes, so that is good enough. If you say I have walked from your place to the general store or say Reliance Mart, and I was able to cover this 3,000 steps in 30 minutes, then good enough.
So one last question, ADHD is seen in any group of people, so with ages 50 and above, how to deal? I think she is asking that with age above 40,
adult ADHD. Yeah, I mean the research that I shared with you, the benefits of physical exercise on ADHD, especially cognitive symptoms, that was with respect to children only. With adult ADHD population, because the adult ADHD itself is a very under recognized problem and not very easy to recognize. More than under recognized, it's not very easy to recognize. And when you're talking of elderly, it's much more different. So ADHD is a developmental disorder. It has to come up from childhood. ADHD cannot start happening at age of 50. So it has to be there in childhood and persist beyond adulthood. The chances of persistence is less, but then at that point, if a person comes to you at 40 years and say, you have to diagnose ADHD, it will be very difficult unless you have a good history. So in them, I do not have much information how physical exercise will be helpful in them. if you take that person from a general population point of view, like, he is at 50 years now, going into maybe, later age groups where there is chance of dementia anyway. So in them, if you ask them to start exercise, then it will be definitely beneficial.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. On behalf of Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga and all our social media friends, I would like to thank Dr. Sai Krishna sir for accepting our invitation, enlightening us about the topic. You covered almost each and every aspect of exercise and mental health wonderfully. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I would like to request Director sir for his concluding remarks if he has to make any.
Very informative and very interesting, and my only request, whoever is watching this, let us give some importance in our life for physical activity. That is the need of the hour if you want to be healthy physically and also to prevent many of the psychiatric conditions which are surging in the recent past. Thank you very much, Professor, for your very scholarly presentations. Hope to once again see you at the earliest in very different platforms of our institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I would also like to thank Director of MDNIY, Dr. I.V. Basva Reddy sir, for being the guiding force behind these kind of programs. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I would also like to thank CNDO of MDNIY, our technical team, and all our social media friends for joining us today. Now, as per the tradition of our institute, let us end the program with Shanti Path. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhave Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you, Tayab, Charu. Thank you, Professor Krishna. Thank you.